Let's call this committee of the whole meeting for August 6, 2024 to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Garza.
Here.
Alderman Masiacos.
Present.
Alderman Donnell.
Here.
Alderman Franco.
Here.
Alderman Seville.
Here.
Alderman Tolliver.
Here.
Alderwoman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Bug. Here. Alderwoman Bade.
Here.
Alderman Lash.
Present.
Alderman Warman.
Here.
Mayor Irvin's present.
Is there a motion to approve the minute?
So moved.
Is there a motion to approve the
Second.
minute? Can I-
Second.
There's been a motion to approve the minutes for July 16, 2024. Motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman, who was that, Lash? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries by voice vote. Let's go on to the mayor's report. Mr. Muhammad, do you have anything to report on the mayor's report? Though Mr. Muhammad is not present, well, I will speak as to the mayor's report. And I think we all know as of August 1st, Alderman Yamas has officially resigned as Ward 1 Alderman. Over the past couple of weeks, we have been undergoing an application, interview, and selection process to find his replacement. After a 10-day application window, we received 11 applications from Ward 1 residents. Of those 11 residents, 9 were male, 2 were female. 9 lived in the 60505 section of Ward 1, and 2 lived in the 60502 section of the ward. I, along with other senior staff members, interviewed all 11 candidates as well as representatives from the Alderman's office as well. From those interviews, we narrowed down the pool of 5 finalists for whom I took extra time and considered to review their applications, including interest letters, resumes, and any supporting letters of recommendations that were received on behalf of the candidates. Tonight, I'm bringing before the City Council my recommendation for the new Ward 1 Alderman who will serve until the general election in April 2025. With just 9 months to serve in this capacity, I knew we needed someone who could ideally hit the ground running and be knowledgeable about the ward, about government, and about public service. In my recommendation, we have a person who has experience with all 3 of those. When you think of selfless service to Aurora community, this name is certainly at the top of the list. He brings not only the experience of an elected official, but also decades of institutional knowledge about the inner workings of our very city government to the table. Both of those, coupled with his many volunteer roles in the community, make him an ideal fit to serve as Alderman of Ward 1, where he lived for more than 4 decades and raised his family. He served at Aurora City Hall for 35 years and has been an elected member of East Aurora Board of Education for the last 7 years. He has served several boards in the community and comes highly endorsed and recommended by key members of Ward 1. Tonight it is my honor to recommend Mr. Dan Barrero to serve as Alderman of Ward 1 until the general election in 2025. So Dan is here. Let's give him a round of applause. You know, I present this recommendation this evening in anticipation of a full vote of the City Council on next City Council meeting on Tuesday. So it will be on the agenda on next Tuesday. Dan, you want to come up for a second if you don't mind? As I don't have to, write this, you can speak at that one right there. I don't have to reintroduce anyone to Dan Barrero, who we have known here in the city for a number of years. I got to know you working under Stover when I first got involved, but I believe you were hired by Pierce. So not only worked under Pierce, Stover, Tom Weisner, as well as a couple years under myself before you. And O'Connor, a couple of years myself before you retired. So next week we will have an opportunity to take the vote and swear Mr. Barrero in, but I want to see if anyone in the City Council has any questions for him before we get to that point next week. Any questions or statements about Dan? Now, I will say this before anyone speaks, and I'll pass the mic over to Alderman Seville. Dan and I, have been on the other side of a lot of issues over the years, as me and Alderman, and working sometimes with the administration, sometimes against the administration that he worked for. But I can tell you that for those number of years that he worked for me while I was mayor, I learned to respect this man, his commitment to the city, his commitment to the residents, his commitment to making Aurora the best city it possibly can be. So, although we had these 11 members, many of them very, very qualified and impressive individuals, none had the experience and background that Dan had to bring to the table to hit the ground running and recognize how government works and what we need to do to move the government forward. So at this time, I will give I'll give our alderman an opportunity to comment or ask questions. Alderman Seville.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Well, I think there were many fine candidates that submitted their applications. I'm sure it was hard to choose the best, but I think Dan is a superb appointment. I've had occasion to work with Dan Barrero since I think it was in 1986 or 1987 when you first came to work with Mayor Pierce at the time as an intern, and you stayed and you contributed mightily to the progress that we made in the city of Aurora over the years in various capacities. You started in the mayor's office, then you worked in the finance department for a long time. You knew the budget inside and out, and then finally you ended up where you were in neighborhood services and community services and the like. And you serve on the school board too. So I think, Dan, you're very qualified to take up the reins of the first ward alderman. And I know you do a fine job, and it's a pleasure. It'll be a pleasure serving with you. You get it. You understand what it's all about, which is our citizens. So thank you.
Any other alderman? Questions or comments? There being none. Dan, would you like to say anything to the alderman before we get to a vote next Tuesday and get to the point where we're looking to swear you in?
Well, I didn't foresee this happening, but an opportunity presented itself. One of my hardest decisions is to think about leaving my position on the East Aurora School Board. I've served, I'm in my 12th year. I was on the board and then took a vacation and then came back. So there was a break. And so that to me is hard because I'm an East Aurora graduate, lived on the east side most of the time that we lived in Aurora since 1969. Most of that time was in the first ward. But my passion is to give back to my alma mater, and we've made a lot of progress. And I think when East Aurora shines, it just makes the city brighter. So that's been a long time passion of mine. So giving that up is a sacrifice. But I look at it this way, by serving on the council, more can be done to support District 131 on the, I'm an East Sider, supporting the East Side and in particular First Ward, where, that's home, that's where I've been for the, since 1979. And working here, I learned the ins and outs of many departments, been in the mayor's office 2 different times, under different administrations, was in HR, in finance, had a hand in developing the new budget process, award-winning budget, which I think is great. And through that process, I learned a lot about the city, about different departments and what they do. And then working in community services, I enjoyed that because I got to work with the residents and making a difference there. And so, I retired, been retired, you blink and it's like, where'd the time go? And so this is an opportunity to come back. I have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and like to, share that and contribute to make the city better.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate it. One more round of applause for Dan Barrero. Brother. Reach out to Clayton Muhammad. I'm sure the media is going to want to speak to you a little bit. Reach out to Clayton Muhammad so we can talk about the process and get you on the, and our team will get you on the agenda so we can vote for you, fill in that seat, and have you come up and join us in the city council hopefully next Tuesday. All right, brother.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's go on to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to offer public comment?
We do, Mr. Mayor.
Will you read the rules of public comment, please?
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, all persons shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under the rules established and recorded by the council. Under our rules, any person may address the committee of the whole for up to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for all public comment. No person other than the timekeeper or the chair for the purpose of maintaining order may interrupt a person recognized for public comment during his or her comments. Members of the committee of the whole shall not engage with nor respond to a speaker during the time set aside for public comment. Staff is directed to follow up with members of the public with respect to any concerns raised during public comment within the scope of the city's authority following the adjournment of this meeting.
Madam Clerk, we call the first speaker that wants to offer public comment.
Edward Ash.
Edward Ash. There's no Edward Ash in the room. Call the next speaker.
Alice Taylor.
Hello, Ms. Taylor. You have 3 minutes to speak, beginning now.
My name's Alice Taylor. I live at 938 Old Indian Trail. The temple is right in behind my house. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the temple since I've been there. Back in the early 2000s, we had a meeting at Smith School, myself and many of our neighbors with the temple. At that time, we came into a decision that we agreed upon what they asked, except we came to a limited agreement on, we agreed on a limited expansion of the temple. Once I did remember that, I had contacted the Planning and Zoning Commission to see if I could get the minutes from that meeting. A month later, a young man came back to me and said they couldn't find any minutes, and all he sent me was minutes of a COW meeting that you guys had with them. So fast forwarding on, up to the grand opening of the temple, there was a helicopter flying over our neighborhood, dropping rose petals. There were animals that belonged in a zoo and on a farm walking down our new street, Foreign Lane. There was cars parked on both sides of Foreign Lane, where it was no parking. They had parked across people's driveways and inside people's driveways. So there was a lot of confusion in our neighborhood that day. When I did get home, I did call the authorities, and they came out right away and started ticketing the cars that were parked improperly. The animal that I remember the most was the elephant, because I thought everybody was losing their mind when they said an elephant was walking down our street. Fast forwarding on to the next celebration that they had, I was told by the man that ran the temple at that time, 2 days after they had the event, that over 5,000 people went up and down our street on Old Indian Trail and Foreign Lane. They were crossing over our yards, groups of 10 and 20 people, I guess, going to the temple. Me and my neighbors were standing outside. We stood at the end of our driveway, and we could see all the way down Old Indian Trail, if you're familiar with it, nothing but cars heading east and west, turning into Foreign Lane, blocking traffic. Our neighbors, I witnessed, myself and one of my other neighbors, people jumping out of their cars that lived in the area, just saying, I just want to get home. I witnessed people swerving up on the sidewalk, driving on the grass, trying to get home. So once again, I contacted authorities. They came out and tried to control the traffic at that time. But 5,000 people, that's a lot of cars to control. Fast forwarding on to recently, I was returning home from church.
Unfortunately, ma'am, your 3 minutes is up, and we got to call the next speaker, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, you call the next speaker.
Catherine Seiko.
Ms. Seiko, you have 3 minutes to speak, beginning now.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Seco, and I've owned my home at 1100 Foreign Lane since January 1st, 1994, long before the temple was built. The driveway, up until very recently, had 2 speed bumps and lines up directly with my bedroom window. There wouldn't be a problem if there wasn't constant traffic in and out of the temple on a daily basis at all hours of the day and night, as late as 10:30, even though I'm told they lock the doors at 9:30. You might think, so what, if you had lights at night, you'd be right. However, the winter, it's different stories. It gets dark at 4:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The temple people have made good on their promise to remove the speed bumps just last week, which I'm sure the construction company truck drivers who will soon be in and out of the driveway will appreciate. My home has a big picture window in the front of the house, which is set back 100 feet from the curb. I have to close my blinds so I don't have constant lights glaring in while I'm trying to relax in my living room. I even have evergreen bushes in the front of my windows, but that doesn't stop the lights. And the cars today have extremely bright lights that shine not just into my windows, but over top of my house and even into my backyard and the neighbor behind me. Now, I bring to your attention the third paragraph of the original ordinance dated 11/26/02, whereas the City Council finds that temple will not be detrimental to the comfort or general welfare, will not be injurious to the use of other property in the immediate vicinity, nor diminish or impair property values. I'm sure I'm not the only one of the opinion of how the very existence of the temple devalues my property and is in fact detrimental to my comfort and general welfare. You can just imagine if I were to put my house on the market that it wouldn't be brought into question. Authorities of the temple have stated that they do not foresee expanding their membership nor the number of priests. They tell me that they need 3,400 square feet because, and I quote, they have no place to put their shoes and coats when entering the temple. I can assure you that if I still had all of the coats and shoes that I ever purchased, I would not need 3,400 square feet to store them all. And since the members do not attend a service like most traditional churches in our area, but each come and go at will, which accounts for the constant traffic on our street, that they now seek to propose should not have to pay any taxes toward, in a violation of Section 7 of said ordinance, yet enjoy our neighborhood at our expense, it seems to me that a simple remodeling of what already exists would accommodate a few coats and shoes. I urge you all to vote no on this rezoning and expansion and the next one that they're planning, because I don't have the disposable income to buy politicians. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, call the next speaker.
James Reiser.
Mr. Reeser, you have 3 minutes to speak beginning now.
Good afternoon. I'm James Reeser. I live at 765 Richard Street in Aurora. I want to talk a little about the lighting, mostly the parking lighting. I want to make sure that the parking lighting in the future addition does not interfere with other people's houses. You could put shutters on the lights to keep the light from going in other houses. You can use different kind of wattage. You can use different things, but I want to make sure the lighting does not go into other people's houses. It's very annoying. That's all I got to say.
Madam Clerk, call the next speaker.
Adam Pauley.
Mr. Pauly, you have 3 minutes to speak beginning now.
Thank you. We have the handout too. I'm here to talk about harm reduction, the Narcan, the fentanyl, and the city of Aurora working with the health department. We've been able to get in the library and in Copley, and we're working to get into the township as well. The county is actually voting on Copley and the library this month. This is what the Narcan looks like. It'll be kind of handed out for you to look at and pass down. It is incredibly important that we work with the health department on this. They are the direct distributor. It would be done at no cost to the city of Aurora because it's funded through the state opioid response grant, not ARPA funds, which, go away in 26. This is incredibly important. Every 5 minutes in this country, someone dies of an overdose, and 79% of that could be fixed with these. We're responsible for that. We, as government leaders, have that blood on our hands, and no amount of hand washing is going to wipe that off. Only through our deliberate action can we get this fixed. The health department is ready to go. They're prepared to meet with staff. And my role in this is to try to get the right people talking so that we can get this done. The goal is to get the infrastructure in, hopefully, by the end of the year. Thank you. I yield the balance of my time.
Do we have any additional speakers, Madam Clerk?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Let's go on to committee reports. Chairwoman Patty Smith, can you give the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee report, please?
I sure will, Mr. Mayor. The Building, Zone, and Economic Development Committee met on July 24th, 2024, and, reviewed the following items. 24-2054, an ordinance granting revisions to the conventional use permit for a religious institution, 6400, use on the property located at 1104 Furren Lane. Consent?
Can we have someone from staff come up and speak on this a little bit?
Maybe I'll read through all of these before you go, because these are
Go
all
ahead.
to do the same thing. The next item is 24-0255, a resolution approving a revision for the final plot of Shuri Shurdi Sababa Manor subdivision located at 1101 Fern Lane, 24-0256, a resolution approving a revision to the final plan of Shuri Shurdi Sababa Manor subdivision located at 1104 Fern Lane for a religious institution. And the last item is 24-0257, an ordinance vacating a city easement for the property located at 1101 Fern Lane in Kane County, Illinois, 60506. And Mr. Mayor, that's the end of my report.
Staff, city staff?
Sure, thank you,
Mr. Seaman.
Mr. Mayor. Ed Seaman, Zoning and Planning Director, City of Aurora. So I'll just give a brief summary. You see it, there's an aerial showing the outline of the entire property, the temple. It's about 5.5 acres, 4 lanes on the left, Old Indian Trails up on the north. A little perspective, immediately to the east is St. Rita School and Church, which is to the east. And you can see to the south there are some townhomes on Richard Street. The property, the temple has been there since 2002. They were granted a conditional use in 2002. The current facility is about 7,000 square feet. That's that L-shaped building there on the west side of the parking lot field. The occupant load of the sanctuary is about 375 people. That would actually stay as is. So what would be approved with the conditional use would be a 2-phase addition. Phase 1 would be an approximately 3,400 square foot addition. It would be the northwest, kind of the northwest notch of the L there. It would be a 1-story facility, 3,400 square foot with a meditation room, coat and shoe room, and some new bathrooms. So the sanctuary would not increase.
So just so we're clear on the same page, there's an L shape that we're looking at there. So the north to west corner would just be almost closing the L, and make it a full
Mayor.
box?
Correct.
Okay.
And then they would do in the future potentially a phase 2, which would be to add a second story on top of that 1-story addition that would be part of phase 1. This would have some office and classroom and flex space. Currently, they have a 123-space parking lot. You see the parking field there that was built back in 2002. There's also stormwater detention on the far east. They only require 94 parking spaces now per the zoning ordinance. That's 1 space per every 4 seats in the sanctuary. And even though they're not planning on expanding the sanctuary in the future, even with the phase 2 addition, staff felt that it would make sense to add some additional parking with phase 2. So we do have a condition, and they've agreed to add a 36-space parking field just to the south of the current parking lot, and they will expand some stormwater detention as part of that to give them a total of 159 parking spaces once they get to phase 2. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. The petitioner's here with the temple if there's any questions. I just want to add one more thing. So this was approved in '02. They've been there since '02. The city council also approved an addition back in 2013, which would have been, I believe, on the south side of the current building. That was never built, so this is kind of a replacement of that 2013 approval process.
So just to be clear, so the city council that sat then approved the expansion of this building already?
Already in 2013, this is a different.
Why wasn't that why didn't the temple go through that expansion?
They could answer that. It may have been a cost issue, but they've looked at their facilities, and this would be a different type of addition.
Gotcha. All right, so just so we're all on the same page, no expansion of the sanctuary. However, even though there's no expansion of the sanctuary, the staff required more parking spaces. Why is that?
Because especially with phase 2, some of that area, office, classroom, and flex, could be for some more meeting space or things like that, so we felt it would make sense to have more parking.
And if the city council sends this forward to city council and approves this expansion, would it include phase 1 and phase 2, or would they have to come back before council for phase 2?
No, it would include Phase 1 and Phase 2, so we have full plans on both, including the parking expansion and stormwater.
What is, okay, you know, what, maybe I misunderstood. Phase 2, I thought you said was going to be an addition, which would be classes on top of
Correct.
the second phase.
They're only going to do Phase 1 right now.
Got you.
But Phase 2 would be the second-story addition. That could be 2, 3, 4, 5
Got you.
years down the road, but they're asking for approval of that
Got
now.
your second-story addition as well as the parking to go along with the
Correct.
second-story addition.
Correct.
Got you.
Absolutely.
Got you. So, all right, based on that, questions from, and just one more thing. So you heard some of the issues that the residents have posed or brought forward. One specifically, lights and timing. How do we address that?
So the parking lot, in the future, it does not have to have lighting in the parking lot. If they do, it does need to meet our ordinance, so they need a permit at that time. We would ask for photometrics, get that, make sure any parking lot lighting is shielded. So there's also a large distance to the south to Richard Street, which is at the very bottom there. So, but we would make sure it met our code at the time.
So another issue is brought up, and I'll give everybody an opportunity to speak on it as well, is parking, which apparently they have enough parking spaces to match with the size of the prayer space they have in, but the community is talking about the parking that was in the neighborhoods when they had special events. Can you talk about that?
They could maybe answer that, but I believe once a year they do have a special event, maybe around Labor Day, where they do have extra people that come in and they do park south of their parking lot. The overflow does park in the grass somewhat, but that's like a one-time event a year.
Alderman Franco?
Well, I think I'd like to talk to the petitioner, because I'm very concerned about, it was portrayed that this would be no negative impact on the area, and yet parking across driveways and on grass and all that stuff, that's not a negative effect. That's a terribly negative effect. So I want to hear from the petitioners why that didn't come to fruition, that when they said they're not going to have a negative effect, they still did. I would like to hear from them what happened there. Because that's, the animal's going down the street, I don't even know where to go with that. But this other stuff could be a routine thing, even if it's an event once a year. So I want to hear why that transpired. What happened there? It's just not right. Yeah. So if they could come up, I would appreciate that.
Could I ask one question of the staff first?
Alderman Seville?
Yeah, and the other comment about lighting and the like, do we have included any extra landscape requirements that would help block some of the overflow lighting with regard to the lights coming out of the parking lot?
No, there isn't, but that would be looked at time of expansion. And again, they would have to submit a photometric at the time for lighting. So we'll take a look at that too, for any headlights of cars or things like that.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to, actually, you can go up to that microphone up there. Mr. Steven, if you just stay up, just in case we have any questions for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. So I guess I want to ask the question is, you've heard what some of the residents said. What happened there? How do we go from being a good neighbor, nothing's going to be a negative effect, to having what we just heard happen? Can you explain some of that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll take a minute to explain if it makes sense, right? So I'll be happy to answer their questions as well. To our knowledge that we occupied this facility since 2002. The only time that we, at the time of opening a temple, we got as part of the rituals, yes, animals come and take a round in the shed, and then elephant was there, helicopter was the right story. During that time, probably the guests might have parked outside because internal parking might have been blocked at that point of time because of their animals roaming around, etc. But I would like clarity in terms of, hey, in the recent past, when is that they experienced this other than 2002 or 2006 time frame that they are talking about? If there's anything, I would stand corrected on that front. But I don't remember our guests on the one occasion that Ed was pointing out on the Labor Day weekend. We do a celebration for the neighborhood, as well as health camps and blood donation during that time. And people normally accommodate, if we overflow on the parking, we'll go on the grass on the south, where we park our cars. But it never happens that even on 4-on lane, without calling the local authorities, we never park or allow any patrons to park anywhere outside. That's a part of announcements that we do. But I stand corrected if there's anything such happened, not in our notice.
So this didn't happen for a number of years. It happened a long time ago.
2002.
So if you were going to have an event, you would have, I'm assuming you would have somebody out there telling people, park
Absolutely.
here, don't park there, because, and you're going to direct that yourself. You're not going to hope that they do it. You're going to ensure that they do it. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. There are two things that we do, sir. One, we call the local authority. The policemen will be standing there. We will call that for any special occasions. They'll be out there so that, nothing will go around and nobody will park, etc. Is one. Second, our volunteers will always be there, directing, saying, hey, how the parking goes. Till they leave the facility as well, we want to volunteer so that, nothing clogs the roads right in the intersections. That we take that responsibility as such. And after that specific day that I was talked about in the beginning when we opened the temple, to my knowledge, I don't think we have any such occurrence that we park anywhere outside the street, and never we went to the police authorities and seek that permission either.
That's all I got.
And just to be clear before I go back down to this side, when they do have large events like that, they have to get a permit, and this permit requires them to have security and have certain police on the scene when they have the large events.
Yes, I believe they do once a year, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Twice a year.
Any other questions? Alderman Seville. I'm sorry, Alderman Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I probably have a few questions for both, but in your presentation, Mr. Sieben, there's this vacation of the easement to move the water main.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk just a little bit about that? And then primarily who's incurring the cost for that? Is that being paid for by the property owners or by us?
Correct, by the property owner. There's currently a water main with an easement, which is where the addition's gonna go, so engineering's requiring that to be moved, so that's what that is. And they're doing it at their expense.
And did we look at any other locations? I guess that doesn't really matter, like moving and putting an addition on the back of the building. The one thing that I'm looking at is the parking, because they do have a pretty big spot there. And it seems to me like if parking is an issue for the residents, wouldn't we want that to be part of phase one, just to address existing concerns?
It was kind of a compromise because what they're doing with phase one is, it's not adding to the sanctuary count or when they have a service, so there shouldn't be any change with that. So that was kind of the compromise, was to do it with phase two. So staff doesn't have a problem with it with phase two. It's because with phase two, there's additional square footage and some of it is flex space. We don't know for sure what it's gonna be. And again, the only time they have overflow, my understanding is the once a year when they have the neighborhood event, but they all park on site. They don't park, I believe that was just like you said in 2002 for the grand opening.
That's correct.
They parked on Foreign Lane. That's not done anymore.
And this might be a question for a different staff member, but do we require special event permits for these?
You just answered that question, didn't you?
I don't know, do you require a special event permit?
No, we just inform the neighbors and we inform the authorities just in case the traffic would be wandering. Normally, the neighbors will call saying, hey, if the traffic is there, we'll just inform them, but it's not.
Okay, and then I just wanted to ask a little bit, this is a meditation room plus shoes, coats, and
Shoes and coats, correct, yeah.
Just so we're clear, if you have a large event like this, it does require a permit. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Yes, we would imagine that it does. So you can't just have large events with hundreds of people showing up without having a permit and having the police on. I assume that you said that's what you did. So you're not doing that?
No, not 2002 time of.
No, I'm talking about you have one every year in September.
Yes.
Do you get a permit for the one you have every year in September?
But the turnout would be less than 300, 400 people. I don't know that we need a permit for it. Our occupancy is 375.
You don't have 300 parking spaces, though.
But 375 people, so 4 people, 1 parking. We have more than surplus, Mr. Mayor.
Have there been any complaints or anything, not in 2000, 2006 when you first opened, but since then, over the last, say, 5 years, have there been complaints that the city has seen come through about parking issues? Are we aware?
I'm not aware of any, no.
We got to look into that. I'm sorry, who's it? Did you have another question?
just a quick question.
And then I'll come to Petty, Alderman Smith.
On the meditation room, so that it isn't just coats and shoes and bathrooms, there's also a meditation room. What are the hours of that?
No, just to explain how we operate, right, sir, that might take 30 seconds, but we have a prayer room. Our working hours in general for the weekdays is we'll open the temple at 9 a.m. and we'll conclude by 12:30 in the afternoon. And we'll open at 6:30 p.m. and we'll conclude by 8:30 the weekdays. The only special occasion we do is on Thursday night. That will have, instead of 8:30 in the night, that goes till 9. But on Thursday, where the maximum people will come in, we want to vacate the main hall where the altar is there and where we pray. That room needs to be vacated. So people wanted to sit there and meditate after the ritual. So we wanted to facilitate some area right next to where they can go there and meditate so that we can clean this surface and we can empty the hall and leave the facility by 9:30. So that's the reason we kept a meditation hall. But the belief that we have and the construction that we have done is the main purpose and deity in the room that we have, that's the only prayer hall that we'll have. This meditation room is for the surplus people to move there and sit for a while, but the facility will be closed as planned as per the times. And we want to expedite that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Smith, and we'll
Yeah,
come back to Alderman
This
Seville.
question is for staff. Is there a reason why we're doing Phase 1 and Phase 2 at the same time? And would it be a compromise to do Phase 1 now, and before they add more square footage, that they come back for Phase 2? Just to make sure that we are being good neighbors as we go through the Phase 1 process before we head to the Phase 2. There may be a very good reason why you're doing both of them together that I'm not aware of.
So we sometimes do and we sometimes don't, so that would be a legitimate thing that could be modified if you want them to come back.
Well, they're talking 5
yeah.
years. I mean, Phase 1, 5 years from now, I mean, it's
It could
a lot
be
could
10
change.
years.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know that. That would be up to the city council if they wanted to bifurcate that and have that come back for a conditional use in the future.
Would that be of any ease to the residents with their concerns now if we were to do Phase 1 and put Phase 2 off until they're ready to do it? Would that make any
They would have
difference
to-
with the residents?
They would have to come back for a public hearing if you wanted to separate Phase 1 and Phase 2. We would just say Phase 2 would have to come in for a conditional use in the future. You could see how Phase 1 went with the expansion, so.
And would, in your professional opinion, is it best for us to be doing these phases together?
We look at it both ways, as long as they're not having negative impact on the neighbors, which staff did not feel with the conditions that they were. We weren't necessarily going to have them come back for a public hearing for Phase 2. That's the reason we were recommending approval together. So, because we did have the condition with the extra parking with Phase 2, so.
But is there a way to bifurcate where they don't have to have a public hearing, but they have to come back before city council?
We could do it where they have to come back for a final plan, but it's not a public hearing. That could be a possibility. We could add that as a condition. That Phase 2 would come back as a final plan, which would go to BZE committee, then appealable to COW.
I think that would be a good thing for us to look at, to feel like we'll get Phase 1 done and make sure we're taking a good look at
Okay.
how everything is going in the community and make it so they don't have to come back, but the petitioner has something to add to that.
Just to add, the whole point, like we approached the city, they asked us to include together because of the cost reasons. If we're going for the Phase 2 at that point of time, the foundation of the building has to be bared for the 2 stories. So either we'll take that at this point of time and then rather than incurring the 20-30% cost more now. And that's the reason we're combining them together and presenting. And second point I want to make is we have the second story right now for the existing building. That existing building will be taken out. That's where the rooms will come on the top. So it's not that we're not.
So that is a good point. They have to build, with the first story addition, they have to build it so it can support a future second story, so that's a good reason.
And just to be clear, what he just said, you have a second story now, you're just gonna use that.
On
The
the
L
old,
section.
the old portion above the address number.
Yep.
That is 2-story. So that portion is 2-story.
But you're not gonna use that as 2-story in the future, is that what you're saying?
This Phase 2 will have second story, Mr. Mayor. So then it's not the new second story, but we have an existing second story.
That we add to it?
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
That will be
Understood. So you
extended.
expand your second story?
Yeah,
Correct.
even from, I mean, I can't speak for the neighbors, but taking the old building may cost additional for us, but we want to make sure that architecture looks similar for the existing building and the new ones, and we want to match it out. So it only enhances the neighborhood, in my opinion, but that's my view.
But if you're waiting 5 years to do the second phase, how are you going to make sure it looks like the first phase? How are you
No.
going to guarantee it looks like the first phase if you don't, 5 or mentioned 10 years from now. Could be a
At least the match-wise, the built and the architecture could be similar. That's the plans that we are submitting right now. 5 or 10 years is purely on the financial reason, right? So we have to go for fundraising again whenever we'll be ready. And as I last said in the last meeting, we don't believe in keeping a high loans, and we want to make sure that we build that when we have money.
Alderman Seville?
Yes, Mayor. The question that was discussed and arose earlier, excuse me, with regard to the 2002 celebration that the neighbors were very concerned about at the time, I had occasion to talk with the chairman of the board, Mr. Nagy at the time, and he told me that unfortunately they did not seek nor get approval for a permit for the elephant and the helicopter and the like. So that really started the neighborhood dialogue off to the wrong foot, so to speak. But since that time, I think nothing like that has really occurred in that surprise in great number. With regard to the parking, for example, between phases 1 and 2, the neighborhood notices that there is a need for parking, but phase 2 is not built yet. How can we make sure that there will be enough parking under this current plan if it's approved by City Council?
Well, they'd have to build the floor plan as per being approved, which is just the meditation room, coat, shoe. So that is used not at the same time as the sanctuary. It's a separate, but, so
That is
it'd be only if they were to add on the sanctuary that would kick in additional parking for phase 1.
It's a surplus people, as I said, from the main altar room to the other room, they'll transition there and then they'll leave out the temple while people collect their food. We serve free food every Thursday for everybody who walks into that, like any other shelter, like we do services. So they'll just leave from that, but it's not going to be additional response, any of the additional patrons or occupancy will not be there. This is the surplus people from the same altar will go there and leave.
No, I understand that, but the neighborhood still has some concerns with regard to potential events or festivals and the like, what you may or may not have in the future, and what you're hosting at the temple. So my concern is if there is a need for parking and phase 2 isn't.
I would just say the only way to probably do it would be to condition it that phase 1 would have to do the 36 space parking addition instead of with phase 2. That'd probably be the only way to do it.
The only way.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a time, like a window of opportunity to review it at such point in the future. We couldn't structure that.
I don't see how you could do it.
Is that something the temple would consider?
We haven't thought through that, but our occupancy will not change, but unless needed.
No further questions at this time.
Alderman Franco?
Unfinished.
Another question.
Just as it relates to parking, there was something that was put on as a condition from, I believe, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and I was looking for where it was. I know I read it and took notes on it. It's a signed parking agreement with the residents, 400 foot outside the barrier of the property. Can you go into that a little bit? And what is that between phase 1 and phase 2, or because I almost feel like that also needs to come before phase 1.
So that's a good point. That's one of the conditions that's in your packet. So number 1, the condition, and maybe this addresses Alderman Seville's question, that prior to completion of phase 1 construction, so to occupy the phase 1 construction, the petitioner shall provide the City of Aurora with a signed parking agreement with property owners within 400 feet of the subject property's exterior property line. So the thought there was that they could work out a deal with St. Rita, which has a very large parking field, that on occasions where they would need it with these special events, that they could use overflow parking with St. Rita. So that would accommodate phase 1 until they build phase 2, then they add their own parking. So, thank you.
Can they legally park in that grass field that they own as you know, on special event
They're
days?
supposed to park on hard surface.
Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like we're putting this on unfinished, but from now, we're asking the question. Just want to make sure we have a couple more questions. But now until then, unfinished, let's issues that have come up with lighting, so we can address those by the next meeting. Whether it's lighting, how are we gonna address, because I see as you leave out of their location of the church driveway, it goes right into the street on the foreign lane, which I see could be shining into somebody's.
I believe they've already removed those speed bumps.
I'm sorry. So they've already moved the speed bumps, but
We removed 2 speed bumps, Mr. Mayor.
Did you remove them? Okay, so whatever issues that exist out there, and I know you said you're not aware of any as of yet, but let's look and see if there have been any complaints, so we can address those before we come back, so we can have all the answers addressed and hopefully move this even forward and pass it. But we have a few more questions here, just to make sure that we have all our T's crossed and I's dotted and address these issues, which it sounds like you're willing to do before we get to a vote. Alderman Tolliver, do you have any questions?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it already, but I'm just looking at the map right here. So I know we had some people talking about the lighting itself. So from what I'm looking at this parking lot, I don't know what type of lights are there now, but I mean, I can see maybe some of these houses, 2 or 3 houses on Old Indian Trail, maybe having a problem with it. I'm not seeing how anybody on Foreign could have a problem with the lights unless there's lighting going up this kind of like a driveway, so to speak. Are there lights right there? Are those
Yeah,
lights?
the lady who spoke lives at the, where the exit is of the driveway. I think she's 1100 there.
And there are lights that are right
And
there.
her
on
house
that
is
little-
across from their drive.
Okay. So I mean, is it a matter of like the direction that the lights are going? Could there be different type of lights to avoid whatever they're going to do next?
Well, she's referring to the headlights, so there's nothing you can do
Okay,
about
for the
that.
cars itself.
And they've already taken out the speed bumps, so the lights aren't bouncing up
Bouncing
and
up,
down as
okay.
they go towards their house.
So it's not like structural lights, like light poles
Correct.
or anything like that. It's the actual headlights that they're. Oh, okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for clarification.
Alderman Smith?
I just wanted to make sure we did acknowledge that in BZNE, we did discuss the speed bumps that were there. And since that time till today, they did remove those speed bumps because those speed bumps were causing light issues into some people's windows. So thank you for being proactive in removing those speed bumps.
Thank you for acknowledging.
Any other questions or comments? There being none, we're going to put this on unfinished, but let's see if we can address as many issues as possible, satisfy the neighbors with the community, so we don't have any, no issues at all, hopefully. Sounds like you guys are willing to work on it and address those issues.
Absolutely.
So please, Mr. Sieben, if you can also speak with the neighbors and identify what some of the other issues are, so we can address those as well. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
So all four of these-
All four are going unfinished. Yeah.
And that's all that we have for BZNE, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Chairman Franco, can you give the Finance Committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee met on July 25th, 2024, and reviewed the following items. 24-0551, a resolution requesting approval to purchase CCTV cameras and equipment for a forensics laboratory for the Aurora Police Department using funds received from the Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, Technology and Equipment Program. The grant money covers 100% of the proposed purchases, with money left over for future needs covered by the grant.
Consent.
Unfinished.
Unfinished.
Next is 24-0553, a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Compass Minerals America Incorporated in the amount of $773,372, and the appropriation and expenditure of MFT funds for an amount up to $1 million for salt purchases. This purchase is to fill a new salt dome, which is not the scope of
Consent.
the work when we purchase from the DuPage County or state bid process.
No objections, I'm going consent.
And the last one is 24-0558, an ordinance amending the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024, amendment number 2 for the fiscal year 2024.
Consent.
One
No.
quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Lesh?
Thank you. It's a question for finance on items 9, 10, 37, and 38 about the golf course. It looks like it's both reporting revenue and expenses for food and beverage as well as other items. And it looks like our costs exceed our sales. So I just wanted to see what was going on there in both categories.
Okay, Stacy Peterson, Director of Financial Operations. Those we had looked at the revenue items, that is for them to purchase additional food for the golf course to sell, and also merchandise to replenish their stock for future sales.
Okay. And then my only other question was about the number 13, the 200,000 addition for the census. I'm assuming that we just miscalculated a little bit at budget time last year, and this is the additional amount that we recently approved.
Yeah, basically, we estimated how much we anticipated it would cost for the special census. We just recently got documentation that gave us the correct dollar amount that we needed. So this is just adjusting the budget to reflect that additional 200,000.
Okay. No further questions. I'm okay with it going on consent, and appreciate staff's effort for all the grants that are coming in.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes the Finance Committee's report.
Thank you very much. Let's go on to Chairman Seville. Can you give the Public Health, Safety, and Transportation Committee report, please?
Yes, Mayor, the meeting was scheduled for lack of business.
Thank you much. Chairwoman Wani Garza, can you give the Infrastructure and Technology Committee report, please?
Just this one, because the other two, they're not working. I want to work with this
Go
one.
ahead. Okay.
Okay, we met on July 22nd. The first item in the agenda was 240536, a resolution to award the North Avenue Storm Sewer Extension Project located in Ward 3 and 7 to Superior Excavating Company to bid amount $182,162 and 0
Consent.
cents.
No objections. Time to go on consent.
The next item is 24-0540, a resolution authorizing Director of Purchasing to utilize the Sourcewell and Omnia Cooperative Purchasing Contract to enter in agreement with Interiors for Business, Inc. in the amount of $1,090,000 for furniture and the new Public Works Combined Maintenance Facility.
Consent.
No.
One quick question.
Alderman Lash.
Do we know if Sourcewell Steelcase is a prevailing wage contractor? I would assume it is, since it's a new construction on our building, but.
All right, we get it.
Chris Minnick, Chief Financial Officer. The short answer, Alderman, is yes, they are a prevailing wage contractor. The majority of the purchases for furniture and then the installation services, to the extent it will be required, would be prevailing wage. It's through an intergovernmental cooperative, so they are very familiar with the workings and the requirements of the Illinois prevailing wage.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, this item will go on to consent with no objection.
Okay, they conclude the meeting, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Chairman Warman, can you give the Rules, Administration, and Procedure Committee report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rules Administration and Procedures Committee meeting met on July 16th and reviewed the following item. 24-0529, a resolution authorizing and directing the Chief of Staff of the Office of the Alderman to encumber and expend funds allocated to Ward 1 for purposes related to the Ward 1 back-to-school bash.
Consent.
I believe that one's for information only, so no action needed. Is that the only item?
That's the only item on the agenda, yes.
Thank you, Chairman Warman. All right, let's go on to, that concludes committee reports. Let's go on to new business. Madam Clerk, you read the first item under new business.
240580, a resolution approving the appointment of Chris Ragona as Director of Community Services.
So moved.
There's been no
Second.
objection. This item will go on consent. For the city council meeting, Alderman Franco.
I just want to go back to the, under the wrap one. That's, I don't believe that's information only, it's a
Didn't say so.
resolution.
Yes.
That says no action needed?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just saw a resolution in there, and I didn't see that, thanks.
All right, so consent also for Mr. Ragona. We'll see you next week for the vote, brother. All right, there is no need for, that concludes new business. There is no need for a closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
There's been a motion made by Alderman Smith, Alderman Bugg, second by Alderman Smith. You guys, good luck tonight for National Night Out. Everybody's got something going on throughout the city. I hope to see all of you there. Celebrate with our first responders this evening. This meeting is adjourned.